Crash by Jerry Spinelli, chapters 3 and 4. Read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. Chapter 3. Next time I heard him, he was calling, "Hey, John! Hey, John!" He was running up the street. I was busy peeling bark off a tree in the yard. I glared at him. "Who says my name's John?" He came up to me, huffing, button going in and out. "Your sister? She said your nickname is Crash, but your real name is John Patrick Coogan." I didn't know whether to be mad at him or her. "What were you doing talking to her?" "Yesterday, I was looking for you. I saw her out front here. She didn't know where you were." "I was out on business," I said. He never seemed to turn off that goofy grin. It was starting to bug me more than the button. "You want to know my name?" I told him. "You check with me." "Okay," he said, still grinning. "Can I call you Crash?" Any other time, to any other person, I would have said yes. But even that felt like too much to give him, so I said, "No." He blinked. "No? That's what I said." He shrugged. "So what can I call you?" "Call me Horse Meat." He blinked some more. I was almost starting to enjoy this kid, like I was the cat and he was my mouse. He started to say something. I poked him in the chest. "You call me that, and I'll cut your hair off." I held up the kitchen knife that I was peeling the tree with. I had him so bamboozled he didn't know which way was up. I was practically choking, trying not to laugh. "So," I said, "why were you looking for me?" His old beaming face came back. "I wanted to ask you if you would come to dinner at my house." The only word I could think of was, "Why?" "Because you're my first friend in Pennsylvania. We do that all the time in North Dakota, have our friends over for dinner. Don't you do that here?" "We do what we want," he said. I said. I was stalling for time. The last thing I needed was to have dinner with this family of ham bones. And I didn't like him calling me friend. On the other hand, I was kind of curious to get an inside look at the boss dorks and the garage they thought was a house. But if I did go, I had to make him pay for it. "Maybe I'll come," I said, "but only if you beat me to the draw." "Draw?" he said. "Yeah, water pistols. Wait here." I ran to my room. I got 2 water guns, loaded them in the bathroom sink, and brought them out. I gave him one. "Here's yours. Stick it in your pocket like this. We stand 5 steps apart. At the count of 3, draw and fire. Got it?" He didn't say anything for a long time. The grin was gone. He just stared at the green plastic gun in his hand. He wasn't even holding it right. He was biting his lip. And finally he looked up at me. "I can't." I gawked at him. "You can't?" He shook his head. "Why not?" He looked me dead in the eye. "I'm a Quaker." Chapter 4. "A Quaker?" I screeched. "What's a Quaker?" The only Quaker I'd ever heard of was on the Quaker Oats cereal. "It's somebody who does not believe in violence," he said. I told him, "Who says you have to believe in it? You just do it." "I don't fight in wars." I laughed. I waved my pistol in his face. "You ham bone, this ain't war. This is water guns." He held his out to me. "I don't play with guns." I didn't take it. Instead, I took a step back, aimed, pulled the trigger, and shot him right between the eyes. Bullseye! He didn't move. The gun hung limp in his hand. Water trickled down his nose and around his mouth. "Don't you have water guns in North Dakota?" I asked him. "Some people do," he said. "Not me." "Well, you're in Pennsylvania now, Chief." I aimed again and I fired. He still didn't move. This was crazy. Whoever heard of a kid who didn't shoot back? Then all of a sudden I got, "Ha!" I sneered. "Now I know what you're doing. You're trying to trick me." I backed up a couple of steps, went into a crouch, swung my gun arm up, straightened out stiff, left hand clamping right wrist like I saw on TV. "Well, it ain't gonna work, sonny. Hasta la vista, ham bone." Bam! 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 I fired 3 quick ones. He didn't move, except to blink when water hit his eyes. I couldn't believe anybody could be so dumb. Bam! 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 I stepped to the side to get a better angle on the button. Bam! 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 Tracer jets of water smacked the button, while he stood there drenched and monkey-faced and droopy. I was laughing so hard, I thought I'd bust a gut. I aimed again. Bam! The gun spluttered. Out of ammo. I laughed harder. I couldn't hardly stand. He held out his gun, his loaded weapon, held it out to me. I stopped laughing. I stared at him, at his gun. I swiped it from his hand. "That ain't the way it goes," I yelled into his dripping face. "You're supposed to shoot back. You're supposed to." I turned the gun on my own face and pulled the trigger. "See?" I fired again. "Is that too hard for you?" I wound up and whipped his gun over the roof of our own house and into the backyard. Doomkoff! I slammed my own gun onto the ground. I stomped and stomped on it till it was green plastic splinters. I stormed up to the garage, over to the flower garden, out to the street, back to him. I took a deep breath. I got up in his face. I stared. I dared him to blink first. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to stay mad. But I was having problems. "Okay," I said. I backed off. "Okay, I'll give you one more chance to get me to dinner. If you beat me in wrestling. Are Quakers allowed to wrestle?" He sniffed. He licked his lips, and he pinched a drop of water from the end of his nose, and he smiled. "Sure." We went to the grass. We wrestled. I pinned him in about 2 seconds. "Okay," I said. "One last chance. Hit the telephone pole. 10 stones." I hit the pole with 6 stones. He never came close. We long jumped. We stood on our heads. We spit for distance. He was hopeless. I shook my head. "Aren't you good at anything?" He didn't think long. "I'm a good runner." I grinned to myself. "Okay," I said. "One really, really last chance. A race." I pointed. "Up to the mailbox and back to—" I ran my sneaker toe along the edge of the driveway. "Here." We crouched, toes on the crack. I called, "Ready, set, go." I was 6 years old and had never lost a race in my life. That's why I was so surprised when I reached out to push off the cool blue metal of the mailbox to see his hand there too. On the way back, I kicked in the afterburners and zipped across the finish line. His footsteps were loud behind me. We stood there bent over, catching our breaths. I heard him say, "Darn!" and he stamped his foot. First time I ever saw him mad. "Don't take it so hard," I told him. "Nobody beats me." "It's not that," he said. He had on the glum monkey face again. "So what is it?" He sniffed. "Now you're not coming." And he headed off down the street. I let him get 5 or 6 houses away before I called, "Yo, Webb!" And he turned, sagging. "I changed my mind. I'll come." It took a minute to sink in, and then he jumped like a jack-in-the-box. He yelled, "Yahoo!" and then ran on home. That night, even after I closed my eyes, I kept seeing our hands hit that mailbox together.